There is nothing, nothing to fear. There is nothing, nothing to fear. There is nothing to fear. There is nothing, nothing to fear. There is nothing to fear. Well, thank you all so much for joining me in studying the Course in Miracles Workbook for Students. We're reading from the Foundation for Inner Peace version of Course in Miracles. I'm Miracle Teacher Forgiveness Teacher from the Ozarks, Miracle Willie, and glad that you've come to join me here on Lesson 48, Saturday, February the 17th of 2024. There is nothing to fear. The idea for today simply states a fact. It is not a fact to those who believe in illusions, but illusions are not facts. In truth, there is nothing to fear. It is very easy to recognize this, but it is very difficult to recognize it for those who want illusions to be true. We'll read the entirety of the lesson, and that's the first paragraph. We'll come back and read it again and read the other three. It's only 3 paragraphs long, the lesson today. And we're supposed to be thinking of that idea throughout the day. There is nothing to fear. And that was all he wants us to do today. No long practice periods. You can still take one. He encourages you to shut your eyes for a minute or so whenever you can throughout the day. And say it, but you don't have to. You don't have to stop doing anything. Just many times today, there is nothing to fear. Let's take a look now at in Chapter 6, the Lessons of Love. And we are looking in Section 5, the Lessons of the Holy Spirit. And he started off with to have, give all to all. And today is to have peace, teach peace to learn it. So the second lesson of the Holy Spirit, to have peace, teach peace to learn it. All who believe in separation have a basic fear of retaliation and abandonment. They believe in attack and rejection, so that is what they perceive and teach and learn. These insane ideas are clearly the result of disassociation and projection. What you teach, you are, but it is quite apparent that you can teach wrongly and can therefore teach yourself wrong. Many thought I was attacking them, even though it was apparent I was not. During this world, the Pharisees, the Sadducees, many the political leaders, they all thought that he was trying to diminish their authority, their kingdoms. But he wasn't. But he explains how come they thought that. This is really an insightful idea that I hope you get today. Many thought I was attacking them, even though it was apparent I was not. An insane learner learns strange lessons. What you must recognize is that when you do not share a thought system, you are weakening it. Those who believe in it, therefore, perceive this as an attack on them. So if you don't agree with them, they think that you're attacking them. They think that, because that's not strengthening their thought system. This is because everyone identifies himself with his thought system, and every thought system centers on what you believe you are. If the center of the thought system is true, only truth extends from it. But if a lie is at its center, only deception proceeds from it. 2. All good teachers realize that only fundamental change will last, but they do not begin at that level. All good teachers realize that only fundamental change will last, but they do not begin at that level. Strengthening motivation for change is their first and foremost goal. Strengthening motivation. So a good teacher is just going to encourage his student to be motivated to do the task at hand. Strengthening motivation for change is their first and foremost goal. It is also their last and final one. Increasing motivation for change in the learner is all that a teacher need do to guarantee change. Change in motivation is a change of mind, and this will inevitably produce fundamental change because the mind is fundamental. 3. The first step in the reversal or undoing process is the undoing of the getting concept. The getting concept? Accordingly, the Holy Spirit's first lesson was to have, give all to all. I said that this is apt to increase conflict temporarily, and we can clarify this still further now. At this point, the equality of having and being is not yet perceived. Until it is, having appears to be the opposite of giving. Therefore, the first lesson seems to contain a contradiction, since it is being learned by a conflicted mind. This means conflicting motivation, and so the lesson cannot be learned consistently as yet. Further, the mind of the learner projects its own conflict and thus does not perceive consistency in the minds of others, making him suspicious of their motivation. This is the real reason why, in many respects, the first lesson is the hardest to learn. Still strongly aware of the ego in yourself and responding primarily to the ego in others, you are being taught to react to both as if what you do believe is not true. Well, that can present a challenge, huh? Upside down, as always, the ego perceives the first lesson as insane. In fact, this is its only alternative, since the other possibility, which would be much less acceptable to it, would obviously be that it is insane. The ego's judgment here, as always, is predetermined by what it is. The fundamental change will still occur with the change of mind in the thinker. Meanwhile, the increasing clarity of the Holy Spirit's voice makes it impossible for the learner not to listen. For a time, then, he is receiving conflicting messages and accepting both. 5. The way out of conflict between two opposing thought systems is clearly to choose one and relinquish the other. If you identify with your thought system, and you cannot escape this, and if you accept two thought systems which are in complete disagreement, peace of mind is impossible. If you teach both, which you will surely do as long as you accept both, you are teaching conflict and learning it. Yet you do want peace, or you would not have called upon the voice for peace to help you. Its lesson is not insane. The conflict is. But we've called on the voice of peace to direct us. There can be no conflict between sanity and insanity. This is paragraph 6. There can be no conflict between sanity and insanity. Only one is true, and therefore only one is real. The ego tries to persuade you that it is up to you to decide which voice is true. But the Holy Spirit teaches you that truth was created by God, and your decision cannot change it. As you begin to realize the quiet power of the Holy Spirit's voice and its perfect consistency, it must dawn on your mind that you're trying to undo a decision that was irrevocably made for you. That is why I suggested before that you remind yourself to allow the Holy Spirit to decide for God, for you. Now, do you remember where he said that? It was the very last paragraph in our last chapter, chapter 5. Let me just read it again. He said, I choose to let him, by allowing him to decide for God for me. Well, this is what the Holy Spirit will respond to your slightest invitation. And here's what you were to say. I must have decided wrongly because I am not at peace. I made the decision myself, but I can also decide otherwise. I want to decide otherwise because I want to be at peace. I do not feel guilty because the Holy Spirit will undo all the consequences of my wrong decision if I will let Him. I choose to let Him by allowing Him to decide for me. So that is why let's back up here. As you begin to realize the quiet power of the Holy Spirit's voice and its perfect consistency, it must dawn on your mind that you're trying to undo a decision that was irrevocably made for you. That is why I suggested before that you remind yourself to allow the Holy Spirit to decide for God for you. You are not asked to make insane decisions, although you can think you are. It must, however, be insane to believe that it is up to you to decide what God's creations are. The Holy Spirit perceives the conflict exactly as it is. Therefore, His second lesson is to have peace, teach peace to learn it. To have peace, teach peace. And by that, you're going to learn it. To have peace, teach peace to learn it. This is still a preliminary step, since having and being are still not equated. It is, however, more advanced than the first step, which is really only the beginning of the thought reversal. What was the first step? To have, give all to all. Well, he says this is still a preliminary step. To have peace, teach peace to learn it, since having and being are still not equated. It is, however, more advanced than the first step, which is really only the beginning of the thought reversal. The second step is a positive affirmation of what you want. This then is a step in the direction out of conflict, since it means that alternatives have been considered and one has been chosen as more desirable. Nevertheless, the term more desirable still implies that the desirable has degrees. Therefore, although this step is essential for the ultimate decision, it is clearly not the final one. Lack of order of difficulty in miracles has not yet been accepted, because nothing is difficult that is wholly desired. Nothing is difficult that is wholly desired. Isn't that something? What a nice idea. It really makes things, you kind of settle into, just make sure you're following your bliss. And it won't be difficult. You'll be doing what you want to do, what you desire to do. Lack of order of difficulty in miracles has not yet been accepted, because nothing is difficult that is wholly desired. To desire wholly is to create, and creating cannot be difficult if God Himself created you as a creator. And the last paragraph, 9, that'll finish this section. The second step then is still perceptual, although it is a giant step toward the unified perception that reflects God's knowing. As you take this step and hold this direction, you will be pushing toward the center of your thought system, where the fundamental change will occur. At the center of your thought system is where the fundamental change will occur. Remember, because the mind is fundamental. It's what makes everything, is mind. At the second step, progress is intermittent, but the second step is easier than the first because it follows. At least you've made the turnaround, and you're heading in the right direction by the time you get to the second step. That's, I think, why he says it's easier. Realizing that it must follow is a demonstration of a growing awareness that the Holy Spirit will lead you on. Wow, isn't that nice to know? We have a guide, the Holy Spirit. Okay, there is nothing to fear. Let's keep that in mind throughout the day. Over and over, tell yourself, there is nothing to fear. There is nothing to fear. There is nothing to fear. Okay, holy days for today. Analog and observances. I got these from holidaysandobservances.com. Analog and digital TV day. That's in 2009 when they switched, the federal government in the United States switched from analog. They told everybody, we're quit offering analog and we're going to go to digital. Champion Crab Races Day. You ever race a crab? My Way Day. You know, that's a day just to kind of settle into finding out what really is your bliss. National Cabbage Day. Well, cabbages are those brassica. They're a brassica. Oleracea are species. There's a lot of brassica oleraceas, but cabbage being one. You can start your seeds for cabbages right now up until March 1st. You're in zone 6 and 7. I'm in zone 6. But so if you're in the Ozarks, right now is a good time to start your cabbages. And I'd encourage you to grow cabbage and be sure to make sauerkraut. Good way to make it last. Don't cook it and can it though. That kills the beneficial bacteria. But I encourage you to grow sauerkraut. Good for the gut. Good for the gut bacteria. Okay. So anyway, time to start your seedlings. And you can start lots of different seedlings right now. National Café au Lait Day, and that's basically French for coffee and milk together. National Indian Pudding Day. The colonists of the United States, they'd made a molasses and oatmeal, which is basically a porridge, in the old world. And when they got here to the new world, they didn't have oats in the beginning anyway. And so they used cornmeal, and they made a pudding out of that, which is that came to be known as Indian pudding. National PTA Founders Day, Parent Teachers Association, started in 1897. National Public Science Day, Random Acts of Kindness. And of course, you'll always be doing miracles when you're following the teachings that we're talking about, and each miracle is an act of kindness. Who Shall I Be Day, a day to inspire self-reflection and proactive thinking about one's potential. World Human Spirit Day. The human spirit. You know, think of yourself as spirit. You don't even have to add that word human. Matter of fact, probably limiting when you think of yourself as just a human spirit, because all there is spirit. World Human Spirit Day, or we might just think of it as World Spirit Day. World Pangolin Day. And a pangolin they're native to Asia and to Africa. The Asian ones are called Manus panadactyla, and the African pangolin is Smutsia timoneki. They're getting to be kind of endangered because people use the quills on them to make medicine, and then they eat them. So be aware they may need some protection from man. World Whale Day, and of course there's lots of different genera and species of whales. They're, whales, dolphins, and porpoises are all in the same scientific order, which is the Cetacea, and they're all mammals, Cetaceas. Okay, and then let's talk about what is a whortleberry. A whortleberry out of edible landscaping. It's basically a type of huckleberry, as I'm understanding it. Matter of fact, it's called either called a whortleberry, or it's also known as a buried treasure native box huckleberry. And that word buried is B-E-R-R-I-E-D. Buried treasure native box huckleberry is a low shrub with branches that rise to about 12 to 18 inches from the underground, creeping stems known as rhizomes. Its glossy, leathery leaves lack the resinous dots of other huckleberries, and it holds its leaves year-round while the others are deciduous. Its flowers, white and or pinkish, are bell-shaped. Fruits are similar to blueberries, but have fewer larger seeds. Boxed huckleberry is on the Pennsylvania threatened plant species list. So they're endangered, like the pangolins may be endangered. Boxed huckleberry is on the Pennsylvania threatened plant species list. Zones 5 through 7, so all the way through the Ozarks, your whortleberry should do just fine. It does take good high, same kind of soil as blueberries, which is basically a lot of organic matter and acidic. And in Permaculture for Beginners by Carrie Mitchell, Chapter 3, Designing Your Permaculture Garden under Soil Preservation, she talks about that there's several things that you can do. Ground covers, like plants, mulches, but you just don't want to have bare soil. That's what made the Dust Bowl back in the 30s. Lots of bare soil, and we had a lot of dry weather and wind, and it just blew the topsoil right off. It's not very smart. The use of mulches and plants, even pioneer plants, and a pioneer plant would be something that just came up naturally, quickly usually. Your weeds are almost all pioneer plants. So they have a purpose. If you're not going to do anything with it, at least let the weeds grow on it. Protect the soil. There's one teacher, I forget his name, that talks about, he calls your whatever's covering your soil the armor, your plant armor, your soil armor. Okay, and I also wanted to tell you about this William Bullman. The title of this YouTube was William Bullman's on OBEs at Monroe Institute Professional Seminar 2014. It's an hour and 29 minutes, so be aware if you're going to watch it, you may just know that it's a longer one. He did have a lot of good things to say, and I encourage you to watch it. The one thing I didn't hear him encourage as much as I would want us to consider is that it's the Holy Spirit that's doing the guiding. And we want to be really alert to the idea that God is in charge, in the sense that we want to be good children. And I didn't hear him talk about that dimension. He talked about it strictly from the self, and which, it could be really good. And everything I heard him say, I really was inspired by. But I did want to give that little encouragement that, be sure to, instead of just following your own bliss, which I do encourage you to do, be sure that you have that attitude of God is my strength, vision is His gift. Okay, and then he said one thing that I really liked. He said our lesson today, there is nothing to fear because we are immortal. Isn't that a nice way to look at it? If you're immortal, you can't die. What are you afraid of? Okay, all right, let's go look in our lesson now. There is nothing to fear. I'll put a link to his seminar. And the Monroe Institute is devoted to studying out-of-body experiences, near-death experiences, and whatnot, and teaching it. There is nothing to fear. The idea for today simply states a fact. It is not a fact to those who believe in illusions, but illusions are not facts. In truth, there is nothing to fear. It is very easy to recognize this, but it is very difficult to recognize it for those who want illusions to be true. Today's practice periods will be very short, very simple, and very frequent. Merely repeat the idea as often as possible. You can use it with your eyes open at any time and in any situation. It is strongly recommended, however, that you take a minute or so whenever possible to close your eyes and repeat the idea slowly to yourself several times. It is particularly important that you use the idea immediately should anything disturb your peace of mind. The presence of fear is a sure sign that you're trusting your own strength. Okay, remember yesterday our lesson, God is my strength? God is the strength in which I trust. So he's saying that if you're not doing yesterday's lesson, you'll know it because you're going to feel fear. The presence of fear is a sure sign that you are trusting in your own strength. And even though we're not doing yesterday's lesson, we don't want to just do the lesson and then not have any relevance for our life. We want to kind of like take the idea and keep nursing it along. Of course, we'll be working on a new lesson every day, and today is there is nothing to fear. And even though you don't have to take a longer period of meditation or practice period quietly with your eyes closed morning and night, you can if you want, and I would encourage you to. But he's saying just you can stop throughout the day for a minute or so and repeat the idea with eyes closed. Do it as often as you want. You might, but anyway, I just wanted to point that out. If you're accustomed to spending some time in the silence, go ahead and keep doing that. If you're not accustomed to it and you don't really have a real inkling to sit quietly and still, well, then today's your day to just tell yourself there's nothing to fear over and over throughout the day, with your eyes closed occasionally if at all possible. The presence of fear is a sure sign that you're trusting in your own strength. The awareness that there is nothing to fear shows that somewhere in your mind, though not necessarily in a place you recognize as yet, you have remembered God and let His strength take the place of your weakness. The instant you are willing to do this, there indeed is nothing to fear. The instant you are willing to do this, there is indeed nothing to fear. Let God's strength take the place of your weakness. We want to kind of bathe in that idea that we are children of God and that we trust our divine parent to care for us in every respect. Be as little children to enter the kingdom. Okay. There it is. There is nothing to fear. There is nothing to fear. There is nothing to fear. There is nothing, no, nothing to fear. There is nothing, no, nothing to fear. There is nothing, nothing to fear, because we're immortal. There is nothing to fear. There is nothing to fear. To have peace, teach peace, to learn it. To have peace, teach peace, to learn it. Remember, to have, give all to all. That's first lesson of the Holy Spirit. To have peace, teach peace, to learn it. That's the second lesson. To have peace, teach peace, to learn it. There is nothing to fear. There is nothing to fear. There is nothing to fear. And as Sanskrit, Shantih. Our time kind of got away from me there. There is nothing to fear. Shantih.